There's a lot of reasons why everybody in Jesus' culture would have expected Jesus to ignore the request of this man. There's a lot of reasons why Jesus, he was fully human and fully God. So he had all of the temptations that humans have, all of the weaknesses of the flesh, and there's a difference between sins and weaknesses. You get infirmities, you are late sometimes, that's not a sin. We are imperfect as people. We do not have the ability to do everything perfectly, even if we are not sinning when we do it. But Jesus not only had those same imperfections as us in the sense of humanity. He got tired, he got hungry, he grieved, but he also had temptation. And a lot of people around Jesus at this time would have given into the temptation to reject and to hate the centurion who comes to him. And Jesus doesn't. But there's a lot of reasons that people could have given. Have you ever given God excuses for why you did something or why you didn't do something? Yeah, right? We all have. And there's a lot of excuses, not only that Jesus could have provided, but somebody else could have given Jesus and said, this is why you shouldn't help him. First of all, you have to realize that this guy is a soldier for the Roman Empire. And as a Jew, you constantly faced reminders that you and your people were not free. You faced reminders every single day that a country that was bigger and stronger and better equipped than you destroyed your armies and owns your land and exerts power over your people. We wouldn't like that today, and they didn't like it then. But every time you went about your daily life, you would see reminders all over the place. Every time you saw Roman coins. Think about this. If someone conquered America and all of a sudden we're having to use cash with the face of heroes of another culture. Every time you're paying for your gasoline or for your groceries, you have a reminder in your hand that somebody has power over you. Every time they would use the Roman coins, you would see the symbols of the empire. Not just an empire that had power over you, but an empire that oppressed the majority of the Jewish people into abject poverty. You would realize the vast wealth that the Romans had and the very, very small income that you did. Every time you saw soldiers, you would be reminded that you cannot sleep well at night because at any moment of any day, a soldier could kick down your door and drag you off to jail. And as a Jew, if a Roman charged you with something, you could not even defend yourself in court. You could be jailed, you could be tried, and you could be executed without ever even having a defense. Imagine you're trying to soothe your children. You've had a rough day. Maybe a soldier harassed you in the marketplace, and you're trying to soothe your children, but your children are terrified because Roman soldiers drug out the family next door yesterday and no one's seen them since. And maybe tonight, Daddy, they're going to come and take you. Or maybe they're going to take us. What do we do? And you can't tell them anything. You can't tell them it's going to be okay because you have no idea if it's going to be okay. Every time you saw the governor's palace, you saw this marvel of at the time, modern architecture, and you saw the gold leaf that they had at different places and the marble, and you saw this beautiful, beautiful building. You realized that those who oppressed you lived in luxury while you struggled to eat. And those who lived in luxury because they took it from the backs of the people that they conquered, and you were one of those people. Every time you went to Jerusalem, every time you went to your capital, you would pass miles of crosses. You would have had friends that had been crucified. You would have had relatives that had been killed in different ways by the Roman Empire. You would walk by and you would see at different times, I mean, not every day of the year that they have miles of crosses, but at different seasons, at different times they did a lot of executions, and you would actually be able to walk by and look up, and the guy would still be alive. He'd be able to talk to you and weep. And your children will look at you and say, what does that mean? How do you explain that cruelty to your children? I know that many years ago, Sherman, some of the residents of Sherman burned down the courthouse because they wanted to lynch a black man. How do you explain that to your children? Well, don't ask me questions. Talk to me after Sunday school tomorrow, at church. Don't you think the children would see the difference? How do we explain these kinds of things to our kids? You can't just cover them up. It's not like the TV. You can just turn off the TV. When you're taking your children to go do the yearly sacrifices and to go and worship at the temple, they will see the cruelty of Rome, and they will see people enduring things that God never designed people to endure. And as a Jew, you would be faced with all of these constant struggles. And every time you saw a Roman Empire, a Roman uniform, every time you saw a Roman uniform, everything that you hated about the Roman Empire would be embodied in the person wearing the uniform. And you would struggle. And there's a big part of you that would stop seeing the person and only see the empire. This centurion was working for an empire that was actively oppressing and enslaving and murdering people. This man enforced Roman laws that jailed and executed people unjustly. Sometimes it was just, sometimes it wasn't. As a Roman soldier, he had probably killed people in wars who had never done anything wrong. The only wrong that they ever committed was not being Roman. And Rome wanted more land, more territory, more resources. As a Roman soldier, he had probably killed somebody by then whose only problem in life had been they were born the wrong race and the wrong culture in the wrong place. I don't know about you, but there's times I think that we all feel that we are born in the wrong place or in the wrong family, the wrong income bracket. My dad pastors down in Kilgore, and at one point it was the richest square mile in the world because of the number of oil rigs. I think I was born in the wrong place. I think I should have been born on a place where there was so much oil under the ground I could have shot it like the Beverly Hillbillies and oil just comes up. I think the Lord put me in the wrong piece of ground. As a Jew, I wonder if you would have imagined, man, I was born in the wrong place. It's the wrong color, the wrong culture. Because if I was Roman, I wouldn't have to be afraid. Why would Jesus help a man who was part of a system that did so much evil? How could Jesus look at this man whose job it was to enforce injustice and love him? How could Jesus hear this request and actually contemplate doing something for this man? I'm sure the disciples at one point get upset because the town doesn't treat them well. So James and John, being the wonderful examples of Jesus' love that they were, looked at Jesus and said, "Can we call down fire from heaven and kill them all?" I wonder if some of his disciples standing near him today were thinking, can you just call down a firebolt and kill this centurion? And then you have another issue. The man's a Gentile. For the Jews, you had to be careful with how you interacted with everybody that wasn't Jewish, and that's what the word Gentile means. Anybody that's not born Jewish, then you are a Gentile, which encompasses the vast majority of humanity. But how you interacted with them would impact your worship. If I go into this man's house, I'm going to be ceremonially unclean, and that might impact what I can do that night. It might impact when I can do an offering, or when I can see the priest, or when I can do this and that. And initially, this man's friends asked Jesus to go to his house. So not only do you work for a system that is oppressing and hurting and harming and killing people, but you're asking me to become unclean so that can help you. I can think of a lot of reasons why Jesus could have said no. Right? And the truth is, a lot of people would have looked at this man, and he would have been scum to them. But think about this. The reason he would have been scum would not have been because of personal choices. It would have been because he was guilty by association with the empire. If we are honest with ourselves, which I'm sure we're all honest with ourselves, none of us deceive ourselves or make ourselves feel like or think that we're better than we are, right? But if we were honest with ourselves, we judge people guilty by association all the time. We do it as a nation. As a nation, we do it when you're talking about, I'm talking about above a personal level. So maybe nation is not the right word. As a society, we do it all the time, right? I hear people, every time something happens and there's these protests flare up and these things these rallies are organized against the police, and people are screaming about police brutality and all the horrible things that some police officers do, they immediately judge cops guilty because they associate with a system where they might have had one person do something that someone might not have understood, or enforce the law too harshly, or do something unjust. We as a society judge cops guilty by association. Because we don't look at people and see people, we see a uniform. And when we see the uniform, we immediately say, you're less than I am. Because you're the system. You're part of the problem. Do you know anything about that man or that woman? Do you know how many times they've helped somebody out of their own pocket? Do you know the love that they've shown to other people that you weren't there to see? Do you know the times that they put their lives at risk to protect you and your children and your friends and their children and your grandchildren and your nieces and your nephews and everyone that you love? No. Instead, we judge guilty by association. You hear people say things like, I don't know how somebody could be a Christian and be a Republican, because Republicans are all about greed, and Republicans love the rich, and they hate the poor, and they're all racist, and they're afraid of people that are different from them, and if you voted for Trump, you're guaranteeing you're going to hell. I've heard things like that before. I mean, I know Texas is majority Republican, but I've lived in places before where it was vastly majority liberal. How could you be a Christian and be a Republican? It's just as stupid as asking, how could you be a Christian and be a Democrat? Because we all know Democrats are godless atheists that want to burn down the country and take free stuff from everybody. In case you don't get it, I'm using generalities, because you don't judge people guilty by association because of specifics. Instead, you take the worst of a group of people, and you take that color and you paint it on everybody that's associated with it. How could you be a Christian and associate with this group? Jesus, how in the world could you say you're the Son of God and you hang out with prostitutes? That I'm not lying. That would have bugged me. If I was a follower of Jesus, I'm like, come on, Jesus. You can hang out with the centurions, you can hang out with the tax collector, but these women are prostitutes. Do you not know, Jesus, do you know what a prostitute is? Do you know what they do? Do you know how people are talking about you, Jesus? How could that man be a rabbi and hang out with them? How could you be a Christian and associate with any group of imperfect people who do imperfect things? Wait a minute. I'm imperfect, and I hang out with imperfect people who do imperfect things. Oh, man. Oh, no, we got a problem here. Hold on a second. We do this as a personal level, too. As a society, we like to paint different groups of people, politics, police officers, military, depending on I remember my dad was drafted for Vietnam, and his generation fought in Vietnam, and people came home and were called baby killers and horrible things, and they were guilty by association. Really, the only ones that were guilty were the ones that were condemning them. You didn't know them. You have no clue what they did. We do this on a personal level, too. We look at people with disgust sometimes, and we lower people down to the level of scum over something no more than the fact that they happen to be related to our ex-spouse. Well, hold on a second. They didn't have a choice about who their mom and dad were and what other kids that they had and what their other kids did. Do you want me to judge you guilty because of what your brother did? No, because you didn't do it. Yeah, we look at people as if they are the bottom of the stuff we scrape off of our shoes because they're guilty by associations that they had no choice about. We judge people that are inside and outside the church because they're friends with somebody that we had a disagreement with. One of the most heartbreaking things about churches are when factions form in a church. And you get these camps of people who love each other. And therefore, when somebody new comes in, it's a competition to see which camp they can get them in. And I will not love you. I will not be friends with you. I will not reach out to you. I will not go out of my way to love you in the name of Jesus Christ because you sat with this group first and on my group. Because you're friends with them. And this person I had an argument with in 1947. I don't remember what it was because it was 1947. But I know I had an argument with them and I don't like it, and therefore I'm going to judge you guilty by association. We judge pastors by that one pastor that said that one thing, that one time that hurt us. Why is it that we expect pastors to forgive us when we say things that hurt them, and yet we refuse to forgive pastors when they say something? I saw that guy on TV, and I know he was driving a Mercedes-Benz, and I think all you pastors are all correct. Well, listen here. We think everybody that's older than us are cranky prudes. And everybody that's younger than us doesn't realize that no one looks good in skinny jeans. And they're all demon-possessed rebellion children that have something going on. And there's something they're spiking their Red Bull with. I know a lot of these things are generalities, but that's exactly what we do. We take one or two experiences that we have in life, and we dip our brush in there. And we paint condemnation over everybody that we will ever meet, that will ever be associated with whatever group that one person did. One thing that hurt us. I'm not getting a lot of amens this morning, but doesn't mean I'm not right. This Roman soldier was going to be judged by everything any Roman had ever done to anybody. But Jesus does something amazing here. Jesus does something that I have a hard time understanding how amazing God is. Other people are judging this man guilty by association. And Jesus is looking at his heart. What an amazing thing here. What an amazing thing that Jesus cuts out all of the surface issues and the circumstances of life and the man's employment. And he looks at the heart. He doesn't even meet the centurion, but he knows what's in the centurion's heart. That's amazing. Did you realize this? He knows what's in the man's heart and doesn't even meet him. But he judges the man's heart. Think about this. The first thing that you see in this man's heart is humility. It takes a lot of humility to recognize that something's beyond your ability, right? Any of y'all ever tried to fix something that you had no right on God's earth to ever try to fix because you had no clue what you were doing? I once took it upon myself to try to impress my brand new wife. I'm not sure what I thought I was going to get out of this, but I was going to impress her with my mechanic skills. I was going to take off the serpentine belt of a car, which is one of the main belts that makes the whole engine kind of work together, all the parts, alternator, air conditioner, everything like that, the starter. And to do it, I had to take off the engine mount. And I had no clue what I was doing, so I didn't secure the engine very well. And when I took off the mount, it should be staying where it's at, and it's not. It's going down. Going down's a problem because it's still connected to other stuff. It takes humility to sit there and go, I'm in over my head. Which, by the way, I didn't do. I looked it up on YouTube, and I fixed it. And then I sold it. I made sure it worked, though, before I sold it. It takes a lot. Can you imagine the humility it would take for a Roman soldier? You won. Y'all won the war. You won. They lost. They are less than you. They don't deserve your respect. They didn't fight well enough to win, and yet a Roman soldier goes to a Jew for help. Do you realize the humility there? Do you realize the humility there? It would be like back in the 1940s or 50s, or actually for a lot of American history, for a white man to go to a black man and say, help me because you know more than I do in this area. Humility. The Roman soldier is not concerned about his reputation. The Roman soldier doesn't send a messenger to go, let me tell you 12 titles of this man and how great he is and how you should feel just grateful that he even decided to speak to you. Oh, by the way, can you help him? No, he just sends people that says, please help him. Another thing that you see when you look at this man is courage. There's times that you go to somebody, we're all afraid of being rejected, right? Right? We're all afraid of being rejected. And this man knows Jesus has all kinds of reasons to reject him. It takes courage because he's sending messengers and there's a crowd around Jesus. And if Jesus rejects this man, everybody will know it. And they will laugh and they will mock and they will scorn him. And this man displays courage because he goes to a man who on earthly standards has every reason to say, I'm not going to help you, you Roman scum. After that, you see compassion. You know, a lot of people would have said, it is a lot cheaper to get a new servant than it is to heal this man. To go to a doctor or to try to get him any kind of aid. As long as this man is laying down, he is not contributing anything to this household. And most Roman households would have chucked him in the street to die because there wasn't a law against that. They would leave him in the street to die and have a new servant that afternoon. And this man, you get the impression that the reason why he doesn't go to Jesus himself is because he is by his servant's side. This man's basically property. And this man loves his servant. And he cares for his servant. And he's willing to throw away his reputation for his servant's sake, even though there might not be any benefit to him whatsoever. And you see compassion in this Roman. And the last thing you see is faith. There's something we don't get about this, by the way. This kind of sounds weird. You don't have to go to my house. I know what it's like to have authority. I say people go, they go. You say the word, it'll be done. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us. But he's a centurion. He's in charge of at least 100 soldiers. He knows what it is like to have the authority to say something, and it will be done. No questions asked. And he recognizes the same authority in Jesus. That's what it's saying here. He's saying, I know what authority is like, and I know you have it. And if you speak it, it'll be done. That's some faith right there. That I know what it's like to have authority to get a man to go dig a ditch, and therefore I can recognize you have the authority to literally transform the human body and bring healing. That is faith. I'm not asking you to come to my house and have dinner. I'm asking you to do a miracle, and I have faith, which is the reason why I'm putting my reputation on the line. I have faith that you have the authority to do a miracle. And Jesus, because of how much love Jesus has, Jesus doesn't tear down the Roman. He builds him up in the eyes of not only everyone there, but 2,000 years later, we're still looking at this man's faith. He says, he has more faith than all of my people, and he's not my people. That's what Jesus is saying here. You want to talk about my people? We want to talk about groups, Romans and Jews. He has more faith than all my people, and I'm supposed to be loyal to my people. He has faith. Jesus never judged this man because of his race. He never judged this man because of his nation. And he never judged this man because of his career. Do you realize? I've heard people run around saying you can't. I've literally heard this, and it drives me crazy. I've heard people run around and say you cannot be a Christian and be a soldier because you have to be a pacifist. Jesus talks to a soldier who's oppressed people, and he never tells them to stop being a soldier. Because Jesus is not interested in judging our careers, and in judging our race, and in judging our ethnic group, or our culture, or what faction we are in church, or what our political alliance is, or what income bracket we are in, or what car that we drive, because we all know if you don't drive a Ford, you're going to burn. I don't drive a Ford, by the way. Jesus isn't interested in judging us by these things. Jesus judges the heart. And you see that. Jesus always judges the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7, just one of the many references. There's a dozen references of of the scriptures talking about God judging the heart. That means a couple things to us. The first thing it means is that if we are children of God, we're supposed to act like Christ, right? We have got to stop judging other people guilty by association. We have got to stop judging somebody because of their politics, because of what church they go to. I disagree with Catholics. I disagree with Lutherans. I disagree with Baptists. And there's a reason I'm in the group I'm in, because I agree with, this church is a voluntary thing. Nobody drugged me and, sit there and said, we're going to kill you if you don't become a Nazarene. I'm in this group because I agree with it the most. But I'm not going to judge you because you came from a different church, or you go to a different church, or you speak a different language than me, or you do worship in a different style than me. And we've got to stop judging people guilty by association, because it destroys our evangelism. This person reminds me of this other person who never once let me talk to them about Jesus, and they were always pretty rude about it, and so I'm not going to share with you. I've had some rude encounters with some atheists. What does that mean? I'm never supposed to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with an atheist because I had a rude encounter with one of them? I've had some rude encounters with some Nazarenes. Here I am sharing the gospel. You had a bad encounter once, so you don't share with your neighbors. You don't share with your family. You don't do these things. You don't love someone because they happen to be related to your ex. You don't give somebody a chance because they happen to have a Bernie Sanders sticker on the back of their car. Why? When does God say judge by the politics? Because we all know the Lord came down and became a man so that we could have more Republicans or Democrats. You remember that? Go into all the world, teaching in my name, baptizing, make disciples, and make whatever political party you were in. Right? No. We've got to stop judging in our churches. We've got to stop judging people by the circumstances in their life and the careers that they have. And we have got to stop letting someone's association stop us from loving them. Right? There's people that will never love me because they had a bad experience with the pastor. There's people that will keep me at an arm's length their whole lives because they had a bad experience with the pastor. Good thing Jesus doesn't keep us at arm's length, and he's had a bad experiences with us once or twice, hasn't he? He's had experiences with us that would make anybody weep, and Jesus weeps over us. We've grieved Jesus to his heart. We nailed him up to a cross, and Jesus does not keep us at arm's length. Jesus welcomes us in to his arms. Jesus is never going to be deceived by our circumstances. You know that there's some times that everybody thinks everything's okay because it looks like everything's going okay, right? And your heart is shattered in 1,000 pieces. And you have sin that is destroying you. And you have grievous wounds that people have given you, but you keep a smile on your face and you make it look like everything's okay. Jesus isn't fooled. He doesn't judge us by our circumstances, good or bad. Jesus is never going to judge you for your associations. He's never going to withhold his love or his blessings from your life. Do you realize this? God is never going to hold back his blessings in your life because you're associated with a group. Because your last name is Powell, God is never going to withhold blessings because a lot of my family had turned to drugs and alcohol. God is never going to look at me and say, I'm not going to bless you. You're the wrong group. He doesn't do that. And Jesus is never going to look at you and say, you're related to the wrong person, or you're part of a group where someone did a bad thing, or you happen to have voted for this one guy, therefore No. God is not in the business of withholding his love and his blessings based upon the circumstances of our life or the past that he has forgiven if we have repented of our past. He will never condemn you for the color of your skin or the corporation that you work for. Or if you are rich, Jesus loves you. And if you're poor, Jesus loves you. If you have no clue which category you're in, he still loves you. When society has judged us 6 ways to Sunday, it is literally only God who will ever judge the heart. And that makes us ask this last question. For one, praise God that he judges the heart. I never have to be ashamed because of what somebody else did to stand in his presence. But when Jesus judges my heart, what does he find? Just because he judges the heart does not mean what he finds is good. What is in our heart? In our heart, do we seek the comfort of material things because it makes us feel secure? In our hearts, do we judge others guilty by association and have judgment just sitting there in our heart? In our heart, do we hold on to wounds and things other people have done, and I'm not going to ever forgive that person? Jesus judges the heart. If it's in there, he sees it. It is only through cooperating with Jesus Christ and what he wants to do that we can have a heart that is pure. There's never anything that Brandon Powell will ever do that will make my heart pure. But if I let Jesus do what Jesus wants to do, though my sins be as scarlet, he has made me white as snow. I didn't make myself white as snow. I didn't go take a shower with a bunch of OxyClean and then think that's going to do something. It's only Jesus. It's only Jesus. If there's something in your heart, it is only Jesus that can make it pure again. Isn't that wonderful? That the same God who judges the heart is the same God who offers to fix the heart. Wow. And which one does he do first, judge or fix? Well, he looks at it and he looks at it honestly. But he offers to cleanse instead of condemn. And I will never deserve that. Do you realize how amazing that is? God sees the dirt and the scum in our hearts and he doesn't turn away. He goes closer to us. Praise God, he's not a man, right? Praise God, he is not like any human on this earth because we withdraw from the things that repulse us. Jesus died to cleanse sins. Wherever you're at, not only should we stop judging people guilty by association, but we need to realize God will never judge us by that, but God looks at the heart. And every day is a day too long when we hold on to something in our heart that we got to let go. You want to know what the pure love of Jesus Christ is like? You got to let Jesus purify your heart. And only then will you experience the fullness of the love of Jesus.